wedding hall glowed with hundreds of candles, and the scent of white roses filled the air. Cade Ashford stood at the altar in his formal black suit, his heart pounding with an emotion he rarely allowed himself to feel, pure happiness. Tonight, he would finally marry Elena Voss, the woman who had somehow softened the hardest parts of him. He was the Alpha King, ruler of the Crimson Moon Pack, feared by rivals and respected by allies. But when Elena walked toward him, dressed in ivory silk with flowers woven into her dark hair, none of his power or his title mattered. He was simply a man in love. The ceremony was beautiful. Vows were exchanged, promises made, and the pack howled in celebration under the rising moon. The reception that followed was full of laughter, music, and dancing. Cade could not stop watching his bride, thinking of all the years ahead of them. Then, during a quiet moment, Elena excused herself, saying she needed fresh air. Cade let her go, smiling, thinking nothing of it. He turned back to his guests for only a few minutes. When he looked for her again, she was gone. At first, no one worried. She had probably stepped outside to breathe, they said. But minutes turned into an hour, and an hour turned into a search. Pack warriors spread through the grounds, then the forest, then the entire territory. There was no scent trail. No sign of struggle, no note. It was as if Elena Voss had simply disappeared into the night air. Cade searched for months. He barely slept, barely ate, driven only by the need to find her. He questioned every rival pack, every ally, every stranger who might have seen something. But the trail was cold from the very first night. Eventually, his advisors urged him to accept the unthinkable, that she was gone, likely taken by an enemy, and lost forever. Cade never accepted it in his heart, even when his mind had no choice but to move forward. He ruled his pack with strength, but there was a hollow place inside him that never healed. He never took another mate. He never spoke of that night again. 7 years passed. The world of packs and territories had changed a great deal in that time. Alliances shifted. Old powers weakened, and new ones rose to take their place. Among the most surprising changes was the rise of the Obsidian Fang Pack. Once a broken, disorganized territory with no real leadership, the Obsidian Fang had transformed into one of the most powerful packs in the region. Their rise had been swift and quiet, almost mysterious. Few knew the full story of how it happened. What everyone did know was the name whispered with both fear and respect, the Obsidian Queen. She was said to be brilliant in strategy, calm under pressure, and utterly unshakable in negotiations. No one had seen her face outside her own territory. She sent trusted commanders to handle most outside business, and rumors about her true identity spread like wildfire, though none of them were ever confirmed. Tension between the Crimson Moon Pack and the Obsidian Fang had been building for months. Both packs controlled valuable land near a shared border, and disputes over hunting grounds and trade routes threatened to spiral into open conflict. Cade's advisors warned him that war with the Obsidian Fang would be costly, perhaps even impossible to win. For the first time in years, the Alpha King agreed to something he rarely considered, a face-to-face negotiation. The meeting was arranged on neutral ground, a large stone hall built specifically for such delicate discussions between rival packs. Cade arrived with his most trusted guards, dressed formally, his expression calm and controlled as always. He had negotiated with dangerous leaders before. He told himself this would be no different. Maka. He was wrong. When the doors at the far end of the hall opened, a woman walked in, flanked by her own guards. She wore a long black coat over dark clothing, her posture straight and commanding. Her dark hair was pulled back neatly, and her eyes held a sharpness that suggested she missed nothing. Cade's breath caught in his throat. It was Elena. Older, harder, different in 100 small ways. But it was her face, her eyes, the same woman he had married 7 years ago and lost on the very same night. For a moment, the room around him seemed to disappear entirely. His mind refused to accept what his eyes were telling him. Elena stopped walking the moment she saw him. Her expression flickered, surprise, something deeper, quickly hidden again beneath a calm, controlled mask. She recovered faster than he did. "Alpha Cade," she said, her voice steady, though quieter than he remembered. "I did not expect to see you here personally." Her guards glanced at each other, clearly noticing the tension, but not understanding its source. Cade's own guards shifted uneasily, sensing their alpha's shock but unsure of the reason. "Elena," Cade said, his voice rough. It was the only word he could manage. "That is not the name I use anymore," she said carefully. "Here, I am simply the Alpha of the Obsidian Fang." The negotiation that followed was one of the most difficult moments of Cade's life. He forced himself to focus on trade routes and border agreements, on words that meant nothing compared to the questions burning inside him. How was she alive? Why had she never returned? Why had she let him believe she was gone forever? Elena handled the meeting with practiced skill, discussing terms and conditions as though she were speaking to any other rival leader. But Cade noticed the small things, the way her hands remained perfectly still on the table, the way she avoided meeting his eyes for too long, the careful control in every word she chose. When the meeting ended without full agreement, both sides decided to continue discussions the following day. Cade requested a private conversation with Elena before she left. She hesitated, then agreed, dismissing her guards to wait outside the hall. Alone, the careful masks began to crack. 7 years, Cade said quietly. 7 years, and you never came back. Never sent word. I searched for months, Elena. I thought you were dead. Her jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady. I did not disappear by choice, Cade. I was taken, sold actually, to settle a debt my own bloodline owed to enemies you never knew existed. I was brought to what is now Obsidian Fang territory, and left there, expected to serve or die. Cade felt his chest tighten with anger and grief. Sold? By your own family? They needed the debt paid, Elena said simply, though something painful flickered behind her eyes. I was the payment. She explained, in careful, controlled words, what had happened after that night. The pack that held her had been cruel and disorganized, ruled by leaders who cared only for power and fear. She had been trapped, alone, with no way to send word home, and no guarantee anyone would come for her even if she could. Rather than break under the weight of her situation, Elena had learned. She watched every weakness in the pack's leadership. She built quiet alliances among those who were as trapped and unhappy as she was. Slowly, carefully, over years rather than months, she gathered enough strength and support to challenge the leadership directly. When the moment came, she did not hesitate. She took control of the pack, not through cruelty, but through the loyalty she had earned from those who had suffered alongside her. Under her leadership, the broken pack transformed into something strong and respected. She became the Obsidian Queen, a leader in her own right, built from nothing but her own will to survive. I could have sent word, Elena admitted quietly. Once I had power, once I had control, but by then, so much time had passed. I did not know what I would even say. I did not know if the man I loved still existed, or if only the Alpha King remained. Cade stepped closer, his voice softer now. I never stopped looking for you. Even when everyone told me to accept you were gone, some part of me refused. I never took another mate, Elena. I never even considered it. For the first time since she had entered the hall, Elena's careful control wavered completely. Her eyes shone with unshed tears, though she quickly blinked them away, unwilling to let even this moment fully break her composure. I am not the same woman who disappeared that night, she said. I cannot go back to being simply your bride, waiting quietly in your shadow. I built something of my own. I earned this position. I will not give it up, not even for you. I would never ask you to, Cade said immediately. I do not want the woman I lost. I want to understand the woman standing in front of me now. The negotiations between the two packs continued over the following days, growing more complicated as both sides worked to reach terms that satisfied their people. But beneath the political discussions, something else was happening as well. The Cade and Elena spoke more often, cautiously rebuilding a connection neither had expected to feel again. It was during this delicate time that trouble began to surface. Someone within the negotiation was working against peace, feeding false information to both sides to reignite old hostilities. Small disagreements were exaggerated. Minor misunderstandings were twisted into serious insults. Both Cade and Elena, experienced enough to recognize manipulation, began quietly investigating the source of the interference. The evidence eventually pointed toward a shocking connection. remnants of the very bloodline that had sold Elena into slavery years earlier. They had infiltrated positions within her own inner circle, hoping to profit from renewed conflict between the two powerful packs. Exposing the deception without causing greater chaos would require careful, coordinated effort from both sides. Working together for the first time in 7 years, Cade and Elena carefully traced the false information back to its source. They discovered a small group within Elena's administration who had been secretly communicating with old enemies, hoping to weaken her leadership and profit from the resulting instability. When the truth was finally revealed to both packs, the response was swift. Elena, with the full support of loyal pack members who had stood by her from the beginning, removed the traitors from her ranks entirely. The peace negotiations, no longer threatened by hidden manipulation, moved forward smoothly toward a lasting agreement between the two territories. In the days that followed the resolution, Cade and Elena found themselves speaking more freely, more honestly, without the weight of hidden agendas between them. She told him more about her years of struggle, about the woman she had become through hardship. He told her about the empty years of searching, about the hope he had never fully let go of, despite everyone telling him to move on. They both understood, without needing to say it aloud, that the relationship between them could never be exactly what it once was. Too much had happened. Too much had changed. But something remained. A connection that 7 years of separation had not managed to destroy completely. "I am not asking you to abandon what you built," Cade said to her one evening, as they walked along the neutral border between their territories. "I am only asking if there is room for something new between us, not what we had before, something built on who we are now." Elena considered his words carefully, her sharp eyes studying him with the same careful attention she gave every important decision. "Perhaps," she said finally, a small, genuine smile appearing for the first time since their reunion. Two equal leaders, learning to trust each other again. It would not be simple. "Nothing worth having ever is," Cade replied. As the peace treaty between the Crimson Moon Pack and the Obsidian Fang was formally signed, marking an end to years of tension and the beginning of a stable alliance, Cade and Elena stood together, no longer bride and groom from a night-long past, but two respected leaders choosing, carefully and honestly, to build something new between their packs and between themselves. The road ahead would not be easy. Old wounds needed time to heal, and old questions still lingered between them. But for the first time in 7 years, both walked forward, not with grief for what was lost, but with quiet hope for what might still be possible.